At 4:30 p.m., the Dnipro hid a predator. The MiG slipped through hills and shadows, carrying a strike precise enough to collapse a key artery before anyone could react. The Ukrainian MiG-29 cut across Donetsk like a blade, holding 150 meters of altitude and 880 kilometers per hour as it raced along the Dnipro River valley toward the dam at Marivka, now a Russian supply artery, disguised as civilian infrastructure. The pilot kept the jet pressed low enough that trees blurred into a single green smear. His hands moved 3 times for every time his brain realized a change had happened. He stayed inside the valley's natural depression because the surrounding slopes blocked radar beams, giving him a narrow corridor of invisibility. But even that advantage had a timer. In 8 minutes, the terrain would flatten into farmland and leave him fully exposed for the final 8 kilometers. Pilots called that stretch the shooting gallery, a place where survival depended less on skill and more on physics and luck. Through the HUD, the ground streaked past at 880 kilometers per hour. Power lines appeared, snapped overhead, and vanished before conscious thought could register them. Unknown to him, 3 Russian radar systems already had his position marked. The S-400's 91N6E gravestone radar locked him at 38 kilometers. The Tor M2 to the south tracked him with its K-band engagement radar, warming up for a shot. The Buk M3 to the east had started its power-up cycle. Their radar envelopes overlapped like a steel net across the region, each system covering the blind spots of the others. Enough combined coverage to turn almost any aircraft into glitter in the grass. Inside the cockpit, his SPO-15 radar warning receiver displayed the threat picture as a circle of angry strobes. Each flash indicated direction, but not distance. It was like hearing someone shout, but not knowing if they were beside you or across the street. He counted the radar pulse repetition frequency the same way people count the gap between lightning and thunder. Mississippi by Mississippi. 2 meant 40, interested. 1 meant 20, launch likely. Right now, his receiver pulsed at 2.5 Mississippi, close enough to matter, far enough to give options. On his centerline pylon, the Hammer glide bomb ran automated diagnostics every 5 seconds. GPS signal, strong. 12 satellites locked. INS, stable. Rocket motor, armed. But the weapon needed altitude, clean separation, and a stable release window. Conditions he didn't yet have. At 150 meters, releasing the bomb would send it skipping into the next village like a deadly stone. First, he had to reach the valley exit alive. Then he could think about delivering a €250,000 precision weapon from a jet designed when internet meant a fishing tool. His fuel gauge showed 2,400 kilograms. The home was 142 kilometers round trip. At low altitude, the RD-33 engines drank fuel like a freshman at a college party. Every burst of afterburner, every evasive climb, every G-load consumed kilograms in seconds. The math gave him 18 minutes over the target area if everything went perfectly. The drone feed on his display showed the dam at Marivka with no visible traffic. For now, the route seemed quiet, but the reason didn't matter. The strike window was open. Waiting wasn't an option. Russian trucks, many driven by Ukrainian civilians forced into service, crossed the route constantly. The only way to avoid hitting civilians was to strike now, while the deck remained clear. He nudged the throttles up. Speed increased by 30 kilometers per hour. Each second gained now was a second less he'd spend exposed later. Every saved second counted as a win. By 4:38 p.m., he reached the valley's end, and the atmosphere changed instantly. The SPO-15 went from slow, intermittent beeps to what sounded like a kitchen alarm bank during a lunch rush. 6 radar emitters spiked at once. The S-400 search beam narrowed from a wide sweep to a hard, bright focus. It locked him at 38 kilometers. The locked tone in his headset shifted from a chirp to a steady shriek. Missile launch imminent. The MiG's SPO-15 antennas across the fuselage picked up the constant focused radar illumination. To the system, the difference between a sweep and a lock was obvious. A search radar touched the aircraft once every few seconds. A tracking radar hit it several times per second. A firing solution locked on continuously like a laser pointer. The SPO-15 recognized the S-400's signature instantly. The aircraft sat inside the engagement envelope with seconds before launch. He reacted the only way possible. He rolled the MiG into a knife-edged turn, pulling 7 Gs while refusing to gain altitude. The maneuver aligned his velocity vector perpendicular to the radar beam. Doppler radars measured radial velocity, movement toward or away. By removing his radial component, he gave the radar the same Doppler shift as the terrain. For a moment, he became indistinguishable from the ground. The lock snapped. The beam slipped off him, but the broken lock came with a price. He bled speed and drifted off his desired course, forcing corrective maneuvers that stole altitude and energy. And now, every radar operator in the region saw him. The Tor M2 to the south lit up next, only 8 kilometers away. Close enough that if he looked out the left side, he might have spotted the launcher. Unlike the S-400, the Tor used command guidance. The missile had no autonomous seeker. The ground radar tracked both the missile and the target, sending steering commands every 1/10 of a second. This made it nearly immune to spoofing. You couldn't jam a missile that didn't think for itself. He snap-rolled left, shoved the stick forward, and dove from 150 meters to 50 in 2 seconds. Trees rushed past close enough to count individual leaves. As he dropped, he hit the chaff dispenser twice. 120 bundles of aluminum-coated fibers were scattered behind him. Each strip is cut to 2.5 centimeters, half a wavelength of the S-400's X-band. To the gravestone radar, it looked like he exploded into a massive metallic cloud, but the Tor operated in K-band, so he pumped out the second chaff type, cut to 4.3 millimeters. Now he had a chaff corridor spanning multiple radar bands. The Tor's radar struggled, losing him in ground clutter as he skimmed the earth at 50 meters. At that height, radar saw him like a fast-moving truck, not an aircraft. He thumbed the ECM switch. The SPS-141 pod woke up and analyzed the Tor's radar frequency. It created a stronger false target next to the real one, then slowly pulled the fake target away, using a technique known as range gate pull-off. The Tor's display now showed a climbing aircraft moving steadily away. An illusion. The real MiG hugged the ground and slipped into terrain returns. The Tor operator chased a ghost, but the pilot knew flying at 50 meters was gambling with death. One unseen power line or ridge could end him instantly. The release point was 8 kilometers ahead, and soon he had to climb. He made a decision instructors would have stamped failure, but combat rewarded him differently. Instead of minimizing exposure, he would create chaos. If every radar tried to track him simultaneously, they'd interfere with each other's solutions. No coordination meant no clean missile shot. He prepared everything: countermeasures, ECM, control inputs for the next 60 seconds, which would decide whether he accomplished the mission or became a cautionary page in a flight manual. The fuel gauge showed 2,150 kilograms, barely enough. One large evasion could cost him the margin. At 4:40 p.m., he slammed the throttles into afterburner and pulled straight up. The RD-33s roared, their exhaust plumes stretching 6 meters in bright flame. He shot upward like a flare. Every radar operator within 80 kilometers suddenly saw a brilliant, undeniable contact climb out of the clutter. The S-400 operator watched the track rise through 1,000 meters at 330 meters per second. At that climb rate, the MiG would hit 5,000 meters in 10 seconds. The fire control computer updated intercept calculations continuously. The operator selected 2 missiles and initiated launch. Meanwhile, the climb crushed the pilot. 4 Gs pushed his weight to 4 times normal. His G-suit squeezed his legs and abdomen. Blood drained from his head. Peripheral vision constricted. Grayout tinged his sight, but he kept the MiG pointed straight up, fighting for altitude because altitude was life for the hammer weapon. At 4,000 meters, he added a barrel roll. The MiG spiraled upward in a corkscrew, confusing every radar prediction model. Predictive computers expected parabolic arcs, not a helix written by a pilot on the edge of blackout. 3 fire control radars locked simultaneously: S-400 northeast, Buk M3 east, Tor M2 south. The SPO-15 couldn't separate threats. It just screamed. At 5,000 meters, he rolled inverted and pointed the nose at the earth. For 2 seconds, he held the aircraft level in an inverted dive. Those 2 seconds were everything the hammer needed. GPS verification, INS alignment, igniter check, infrared seeker calibration, trajectory computation, warhead safe arm confirmation, all green. That's when the 2 S-400 missiles launched, each 48 N6DM climbing at 2,000 meters per second with 30 G acceleration. He had seconds. He pressed the pickle. The hammer dropped cleanly. The MiG jumped upward from the sudden loss of mass. The weapon's rocket motor ignited, sending it on its climb. He rolled upright and hauled the nose toward the earth, pulling 9.5 Gs. The left wing root groaned, bending at the structural limit. The dive took him from 5,000 meters to 508 seconds. The shockwave at transonic speed rattled the frame, Mach 1.1, 1.2, then leveling at 100 meters, back in the weeds, threading hill. Above him, the S-400 missiles overshot, searching empty sky before self-destructing. Behind him, the Buk M3 locked onto the hammer bomb instead of the jet, chasing a weapon that couldn't maneuver. Ahead, the dam at Myriivka waited. The MiG-29 tore across the terrain at 100 meters, the world flattening into a smeared ribbon as he outran the debris field left by two S-400 missiles that had tried to erase him from the sky. Altitude, airspeed, and violence now worked in his favor. At this height, radar tracking became a math problem too chaotic for systems designed to engage aircraft flying at predictable altitudes. He punched out two more chaff bundles, creating a drift of metallic strips that slowly expanded like a blooming silver flower behind him. Every countermeasure bought seconds. Seconds kept him alive, but he didn't look back. The threat wasn't behind him, it was overhead. The hammer bomb he had released climbed on its programmed trajectory, accelerating under its rocket motor and arcing toward 3,800 meters. It wasn't designed to be a stealth weapon. It was designed to be a precision one. Its thermal seeker scanned the terrain with a wide, deliberate sweep that saw everything between 100 and 2,000 degrees Celsius. In that window, the turbines inside the dam's generator chambers glowed hot enough to appear as a bright, unmistakable anomaly. The GPS input refined the aim point to within 3 meters. The INS stabilized the flight path. The bomb had become a problem that no air defense officer in the region had expected to face. On the ground, the Buk M3 operator had shifted lock to the hammer the moment the MiG broke out of his tracking envelope. The weapon's climb fooled the predictive model. It couldn't think the way a human could, and its logic assumed the weapon would follow a glide descent pattern. Instead, the hammer climbed higher, correcting itself with small fins while the rocket motor continued to burn. It became a point of light on the Buk screen, ascending instead of descending. Confusing, but still trackable, a clean target. The Buk operator authorized launch. The 9R-31M missile kicked free in a burst of flame and smoke, its booster igniting with a crack loud enough to rattle the control cabin. The missile climbed fast, reaching Mach 3 in seconds. Its radar seeker updates 20 times a second, adjusting for the bomb's climb. The two objects were now on a collision path. The MiG pilot never looked at it. He couldn't spare a glance. Every fiber of his attention locked forward, into the next rise of terrain where the ground curved upward before flattening toward the Myriivka Dam. Flying this low at over 1,000 kilometers per hour meant he had 4 seconds to react to terrain changes that would kill him instantly. He flew through a valley cut by artillery craters, weaving instinctively between them. The S-400 operators continued to search for him, widening their beam pattern and elevating their search angle to reacquire the fast, unpredictable MiG. But the radar horizon worked against them. At 100 meters, he lived beneath the curvature of the Earth. The S-400 needed line of sight for engagement, and he had stolen it by flying inside the blind zone that every long-range radar inherited from physics. They saw nothing but ground. The hammer completed its ascent. The rocket motor burned out, and the weapon tipped over the top of its arc. Lightning-fast computations inside its guidance module plotted a descent vector, adjusting for wind speed, ground elevation, and thermal displacement from sun-heated infrastructure. It found the perfect line, then locked its seeker onto the glowing turbines inside the reinforced walls. The Buk missile finally closed into kill range. For 2 seconds, the two weapons raced toward each other, one climbing, one descending, like dueling fencers aiming to strike at the same moment. Then the hammer performed something the Buk didn't expect. It corrected. A tiny vectoring shift, barely visible to the naked eye, moved it off the predicted path by less than a meter, enough that the Buk's seeker overshot and lost the lock. The missile tried to reacquire, but the hammer's thermal seeker narrowed its aperture as part of terminal targeting. The bomb became a colder object, indistinguishable from the background except for a narrow forward arc. The Buk's radar couldn't lock onto a target hidden inside its own terminal dive logic. The Buk missile streaked past the hammer, lost its target, and self-destructed at altitude. The hammer kept falling. Below, the MiG pilot cleared the final ridge. For a moment, the ground dropped away, and the dam appeared ahead. Long concrete lines, support structures, spillway gates, turbine housings, and the service road that Russian trucks used to ferry supplies across the Dnipro's northern flank. The structure looked calm, harmless, and industrial, but he knew the truth. It was one of the last dependable crossing points Russia held in that sector, a route that fed 2 brigades and a fuel depot. If it fell, the Russian line in that region would buckle within days. His drone feed confirmed no traffic. The road was empty. It was the window he needed. At that exact moment, the hammer struck. Its seeker placed the warhead precisely where the turbine chambers met the support column housing. The explosion didn't look dramatic in the drone feed. It was a precise, concentrated blast, a surgical pressure spike that tore through reinforced concrete like a metal punch. Steam surged upward as the turbines ruptured. A plume of superheated vapor jetted into the air. The shockwave rippled through the structure, and a section of the roadway sagged visibly. Inside the pilot's cockpit, the blast registered as a brief flash on the drone window. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. Combat didn't leave room for emotion until the wheels touched home. He banked left, hugging the terrain again, and began the return flight. But the battlefield wasn't finished with him. The Tor M2, which had lost him earlier, reacquired his position as he transitioned across a flatter stretch of farmland. The Tor operator lowered the elevation and locked onto him with command guidance precision. At this range, just under 7 kilometers, it needed only 5 seconds to launch and 12 seconds to reach him. The MiG's SPO-15 lit up again, this time with a distinct tormented warble that identified the Tor's engagement radar. That sound meant trouble at close range. He made the only choice left. He pointed the MiG directly at the hill line ahead, pulling the jet to 120 meters, then 80, then 60, descending so fast that his stomach felt like it hovered above his ribs. The ground rushed toward him with terrifying detail, grass strands, dust trails, the geometric lines of trenches abandoned months ago. The Tor launched. The missile streaked upward in a spear of white smoke, correcting 3 times a second, its guidance antenna locked to the jet's transponder signature. In the Tor's cabin, the operator watched the 2 blips converge. The MiG held straight for 4 seconds, long enough for the missile to commit. Then he pulled hard left, 8.5 Gs nearly ripping the straps from his shoulders. The missile tried to turn with him, but command-guided systems couldn't match instantaneous pilot reactions. The correction overshot. The missile passed behind him, detonating in a dispersal pattern designed to flood an area with fragments. The blast washed over the MiG, rattling the canopy and peppering the aft fuselage with small impacts. A few warning lights flashed amber, but none went red. Damage? Yes, but survivable. He stayed low, instinctively weaving around terrain dips, ironically, the same kind of terrain the Russian defense forces had fortified the year before. Trenches, berms, and fortification lines carved by the occupation now shielded him from radar view. The irony didn't escape him. Russian defensive engineering was now his greatest protection. The Buk battery to the east attempted to pick him up again, raising search elevation, broadening beam width, and adjusting frequency. But he remained too low, too fast, and too unpredictable. He had slipped beneath a layer of battle space where they held dominance. He held 980 kilometers per hour, balancing speed with fuel consumption. He had 1,650 kilograms remaining, enough for 9 minutes of flight at this altitude with strict throttle discipline. Getting home now depended on a perfect balance, fast enough to stay ahead of threats, but not so fast that he burned through the last liters needed to reach his airstrip. He re-entered the valley system that had sheltered him on the inbound run. Now, descending terrain worked in his favor. Radar beams from long-range systems skimmed over him. Ground-based infrared sensors couldn't see him because the engine exhaust blended into the warm background of sun-heated rock. He became a ghost again. But the stress hadn't left his body. His pulse still thumped against his helmet. Sweat soaked the base layer beneath his G-suit. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the cumulative adrenaline that no human could suppress once it had poured through arteries long enough. The MiG crossed 4 kilometers, then 3, then 2 from home airspace. At 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian airstrip, he reduced the throttle slightly, careful not to trigger fuel starvation. The engine's whine dropped into a steadier pitch. His HUD updated altitude to 300 meters, safe enough to avoid terrain, low enough to stay invisible to any last-minute radar scans. He finally radioed, voice steady despite the strain. Thunder 1, inbound. Damage moderate. Fuel minimal. Request priority landing. The airstrip controller heard the distortion in the engine harmonics, subtle but unmistakable. Thunder 1, cleared, winds light, runway 32. He ascended to 600 meters for the approach pattern. The MiG felt heavier than before, not from weight, but from what it had survived. Final approach lined up perfectly. He extended the landing gear. The right main gear hesitated, a result of a debris strike, but locked with a metallic clang that vibrated through the fuselage. The nose gear followed. The landing lights illuminated the edge of the runway. He touched down at 240 kilometers per hour, his wheels screeching across the concrete. The chute deployed cleanly, billowing behind the jet. He rolled to a stop at the midpoint. When he powered down the engines, silence filled the cockpit. Maintenance crews rushed in. One tech stared at the shrapnel embedded in the tail section. Another traced a scorch mark running from the left stabilizer to the fuselage. The strike achieved exactly what it needed to achieve. The mission was over. Was this daring strike a masterstroke of skill or sheer audacity? Share your take in the comments and subscribe to follow the next high-stakes mission.